City Council will begin crunching numbers to see if the mayor's new budget really adds up. Mayor Eric Adams tweaked his initial proposal and added an additional $4 billion to the bottom line, bringing the total now to $106.7 billion, the largest budget the city has ever seen.
We must budget wisely. In crafting the executive budget, we face a substantial challenge, funding $10 billion in an added cost over 2 fiscal years without cutting core needs, laying off employees, or raising taxes.
So joining us this morning to discuss what these new numbers mean for New Yorkers is Public Advocate Jumaane Williams. So thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it. And first of all, let's go Knicks.
Yeah.
I knew you were going to go there. I knew you were going to go there.
So good, so good. Okay, let's break this down, though. So just a few weeks ago, Mayor Adams was telling city agencies they need to cut 4% from their budgets. But taking a look at the latest budget, it doesn't seem to account for those cuts. So what exactly changed?
Well, let's be clear. City agencies still had to go through several rounds of PEGs, and they do have real effects and real impact in the services that can be provided. There's still agencies that have not hired up in the way that they need to. So we still have some impacts here. And I always want to make it clear when we have a focus on how high the budget is, but we have to understand how high the cost of living is. Half of New Yorkers simply cannot meet their needs.
Right.
That's not a vacation. That's not going to the movies. That simply can't meet their needs. We're now the highest cost of living for housing in the entire world, and we have to make sure that our budget supports that as well.
Yeah, I think the question always is, though, where is the money coming from, right? Nearly 60% of the budget earmarked for education, healthcare, social services. That's typical. But members of the city council will start going over the budget with a fine-tooth comb. Some of them say they were duped last year about the fine details of the budget. So the question, when you look at all of the things that are needed when it comes to school, social services, making sure there aren't cuts there, where is the money coming from?
Well, let's be clear. We actually still need to have a little bit more, particularly when it comes to things like housing. People cannot afford to live in New York City. We have a lot of folks who have been in shelters, who have been in the shelters, I would say, asylum seekers. So we have some crises that have never been met. We actually should be looking at revenue raising, and my hope is that the administration will finally join us in asking Albany for revenue raising options. And also, I am with the administration in some regards. Just because we're spending money doesn't mean we're spending it right, and we want to make sure we're spending in a way that is most impactful for what we're spending it on.
Yeah, because you're talking about, I mean, the mayor is saying it's all about getting stuff built, right? So I want to ask you, though, does the mayor's budget actually address income inequality in any way when we're talking about affordable housing?
It doesn't go to where we need it to go. In terms of housing in particular, we definitely need some more funding when it comes to things like housing vouchers and NYCHA. The mayor's housing plan is really attached to some of what the state is doing, so we have to wait to see what the state is doing. And unfortunately, it seems the governor is really falling short when it comes to housing. But we do have to do more ourselves to put funding there. What I would also say is we have to have additional money for things like inspectors from DOB, the HPD, because sometimes people simply can't get in their housing that they do have because there aren't inspectors available. We see something similar when it came to SNAP benefits and food stamps. People weren't able to get what they needed simply because the city wasn't moving efficiently.
Yeah, right. The controller said that there needs to be more inspectors for Department of Buildings, including the building collapse, the garage collapse we saw take place in Lower Manhattan. But I'm listening to you very carefully, saying you look at how the money is spent, and sometimes you don't agree with how it is being spent. So let's talk about some comments that the mayor made yesterday about that very topic, and it has to do with overtime with the NYPD, right? He went on to say that he believes that the money should be spent, and that people dislike the overtime, or do they dislike the NYPD because every department actually spends overtime costs. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think he actually said shame on them, and I would have to say actually shame on you, because we are using another false binary that we should have learned lessons from. We tried this with bail reform, and we suffered daily in New York and actually across the nation. And so these false binaries are not very helpful. NYPD is the only agency that has the type of operational standard when it comes to overtime, whether headcount is up or down. Most cops who've left, actually, in the past, the recent past, it was because overtime was being reduced. It's so attached to their salary. When you look at FDNY, when you look at sanitation, when you look at the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, We don't see that. And that's just a false narrative that's being set, but something that's important for a lesson we should have learned. Lastly, this seems to be a trend, and it's unfortunate. We saw it with bail reform. We see it sometimes in how it's characterized with asylum seekers, this us versus them. And now we're seeing it when we're talking about a very important issue like overtime. And I would ask the administration to stop. Can you imagine if the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene had access to the same type of overtime that the NYPD did? We might not have seen the type of deaths that we've seen and shootings that we've seen recently.
Yeah, well, let's talk about this. Some of the largest investments in the mayor's executive budget includes $27 million to expand the Be Heard mental health initiative and $23 million for a citywide composting program. So do you think that's the right place to be allocating those resources right now?
Look, I'm excited to see that the administration is trying to push forth non-police models for mental health. There is actually a lot of issues with the Be Heard program that we have to make sure are addressed. Still, a full 80% of the calls that come through that model go to the NYPD. So if we're going to expand it, we want to make sure that we're expanding it when it's actually achieving the milestones that we wanted to achieve. So you get a plus for trying to do this, but there's a demerit there because I don't know that we're addressing the concerns that we need to address so that we can make sure that people who call who actually want a health response to a mental health crisis can actually get it.
Right, and I'll be talking to the finance chair, Justin Brennan, this weekend on PIX11 Politics about the budget, whether or not they're going to vote on it in the negotiations. But before we let you go, Public Advocate, I do want to ask you about this bill that you're putting forth to the City Council today. It's expected to pass, right, this homeless Bill of Rights today. How has, or if there have been any changes to that bill since you proposed it last April, and what is it?
Well, you know, I want to make sure we're clear because what has happened with the asylum seekers has made a bad situation, has exacerbated. But on the day before the first buses came, we had over 50,000 people in the shelters, a lot of them women and children, a lot of them working. Many of them have been there for over a year, and many have been there for years. So this has been a crisis for a very long time. And we need to make sure that our homeless New Yorkers understand their rights because many times they don't. This is ones who are in the shelters and also ones who are street homeless. And so what this does is it takes the rights that are scattered in different places and different agencies and it puts on one document that has to be presented to people who are housing insecure and are homeless and lets them know what rights are available to them in New York City.
All right, Public Advocate Jumaane Williams, thanks so much for your time, and let's hope the Knicks go all the way this year.
Let's do it. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right.